not even alive when this fight happened, but I remember because it was early on when I started training, when Jeremy and I were training together, where Pete Sell fought in the UFC and he caught an arm in guillotine, and literally the announcers were saying, "You cannot finish an arm in guillotine," and then the guy tapped. You know what I mean? And it was thought that like, if you catch an arm in guillotine and the person taps, it's kind of like, you know, certain moves are now where they think you're a bad grappler if you tap to them because it's hard to finish, right? But now you're seeing more and more arm in guillotines show up, especially at the high level. Like, you know, Josh Hinger's using a lot of arm in guillotines. Jeff Glover, he always makes the joke whenever he sees an arm in guillotine, he's like, arm in, like a gentleman, which I always find funny. So you're seeing more and more arm in guillotines. Why are people choosing this variation? The reason being is control. So when you roll with somebody, for me, everything that I'm trying to build into my grappling right now is have a way into what I want to do and a very safe way out. So I don't count on tapping anybody from anything. If you talk about like a fully locked out armbar, I'm trying to figure out how to get out of that position safely to something else good. Because there are hypermobile or hyper tough people in the world, so I don't count on tapping anybody. When you're in an arm in guillotine, you're gonna win more positional exchanges. Their defensive routes are not as strong and not as threatening, so you're not gonna get in as much trouble. Everything else. So a lot of times early on when we're rolling, I'll be sticking with arm in variations to control the pacing and the position of the match. Over the last couple of years, there's a couple times I jumped in tournaments when I hadn't really been training, but it was, as long as I could stay in the arm in, I could just force the match into a circle that I'm very comfortable with and just keep controlling them through the position. As long as I don't have to scramble a bunch, just make them roll through this circle over and over and over and over. So, all that's to say, that's why we're using the arm in. When I shoot you guys the video on what we did yesterday, it'll talk through a lot of those transitions. But right now we're working on using our hand positioning to get finishes. But starting with the arm in is gonna be safer overall. And that's why you're seeing it so much more. It's harder to counter than the no arm guillotine, than the standard stuff. You know what I mean? Even like the high elbow Marcellotines and that kind of stuff, you're starting to see guys get more defensively savvy to how to shut that down and take away the things that you need to finish. But with an arm in guillotine, when you get it locked on, very difficult to come up with any other defense besides tense your neck and hope they gas out. So one more variation that I like to use a lot. So a lot of my guillotine finishes these days are one-armed, and a lot of times what I'm using is like this knife hand grip. So the same thing for those of you who like to do a lot of straight ankle locks, you can wrap the ankle and then just get your hand high on your chest and finish the ankle lock one-handed so your hand can be free to do other stuff. That's how I do a lot of my guillotines. So, everything's the same. I've wrapped the guillotine, I've created this position. Chris comes up with that inside hand and grabs. I'm gonna use the same hand to separate, but once I separate, instead of reconnecting hand to hand, I'm just gonna keep this hand away. It's gonna probably get to about there. Now I'm just gonna jump off my chest. Now I fall into position and finish. So, this is one of, like I said, if I'm finishing in a match against somebody, you know, roughly the same skill level, probably 90% of the time it's a knife hand variation from either top or bottom. So I'm here, knife hand, Marine Corps style.
Kill.
He grabs, I separate, shoot deep to this knife hand. Sometimes I'll keep the hand so it can't show back up on defense. So sometimes I'll be here to get the tap. Sometimes I'll release, grab his lat, and get that one. The lat grip finish, everything's probably been done a million times by other people. Like I'm sure there was somebody back in Greece 2,000 years ago that figured this out. I've never seen anyone else do that lat grip finish. And I kind of figured it out by accident, but it's one of my best finishes. So I get on the knife hand, but even on the knife hand, if Chris drives in hard on his shoulders and everything else, sometimes it can be tough to finish. I just grab and pull myself in. And you get the tap almost every time. So, it's gnarly, right? Guys who are tough to choke, the lat grip is like money in the bank. I reach across, I'm hunting the J hook to connect to start my roll series. He grabs the hand and fights. So now he doesn't have to roll, right? Because I can't get good pressure. Yeah, exactly. They'll spread their base. This happens all the time. I rip the hand apart, slide my hand in deep. Now I can either stay, like on this bro hug hand grip, or I can rip my own hand out and grab. Either way is completely acceptable. Different people need different pressures to get finished, all right? So either way, we're ripping the hand off, but then instead of staying on the J hook, our thumb is trying to hunt all the way up to our collarbone. We're trying to get as deep as possible. Against little kid necks, I get all the way up here. Against large adult necks, I might only get here, but as long as it's enough to finish, we're all good. All right, so let's give it a shot. Ready? 1, 2, 3.